Krishna, our great fortune to hear His Holiness Bhakti-Vinashak Narsingh Swami Maharaj in Sridham Mayapur addressing to all the Bhakti-Shastri devotees on Shri Ishopanishad. We are starting with today, day 1, and this is 20th of January 2014. Hare Krishna.
In my pocket, huh? Yeah, it's okay. Okay, we have some handouts for everyone. What is it? Yeah, one each. There's 2 articles. So we have a couple of articles here for you. They're both taken from Back to Godhead. They were both written by the same devotee, by Prabhu, who resides in New York. But they're both very relevant to this course. One is on what exactly is Vedic, and the other is the significance of the Sri Ishopanishad. So, I understand this is the last section of the Bhakti-Shastri course? Yes. Yeah? You're all looking forward to completing everything? So, try to have a nice soft landing. This Ishopanishad. I was reading sometime back, a devotee sent me a big file about interviews done by the people who were researching for Prabhupada Lila Amrita. When His Holiness Satyarupa Goswami was writing Prabhupada Lila Amrita, at that time he sent different secretaries and different assistants around to interview many senior devotees. And one of them went to Los Angeles and interviewed Rameshwara, who at that time was Rameshwara Swami. He had been a very prominent person. He'd been managing the Los Angeles temple, and he was very much involved with the BBT. The BBT had come to Los Angeles, and Rameshwara had taken a very leading role there with the BBT, and he had a lot of personal instruction from Srila Prabhupada. So I was reading through his interview, and at a particular point Rameshwara said, he was quoting Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada said, Sri Ishopanishad is the most important book. So it may come as a surprise to you. Some devotees, they think, oh, I don't know, but they think Ishopanishad is very limited appeal, not for everyone, but Srila Prabhupada definitely quoted in saying this to Rameshwara, that Sri Ishopanishad is the most important book. So we're going to have a look today in this first lesson. Maybe we'll first show the outline of the first week page down. Here you go. Overview. Okay, so we got the overview. We're going to look at the introduction today. Prabhupada, that was the lecture which was given in the Ishopanishad. One of the other things Prabhupada said to Rameshwara was this picture of Vishnu had to be on the cover of the book. At least in America, that was the standard for the English edition of the Ishopanishad. Prabhupada wanted that picture on the book. Didn't want any other picture. I mean, maybe different versions of that picture, but Prabhupada liked that picture. One devotee told me actually that this picture of Vishnu was done by the artist, and the artist would have a devotee. They use a devotee to model, and they copy the devotee, and this is actually one devotee's face. That face is actually, there's a devotee, Prabhupada disciple, his name was Jai Sachinanda. He's still around in Los Angeles, so from his face, actually, we got that Vishnu picture. So Prabhupada had his ideas about how he wanted this book presented. Prabhupada had actually written this book, Ishopanishad, way back, even before he'd gone to America. It was written as installments, and it was published in his very early editions of the Back to Godhead magazine. And later on, when Prabhupada came to the West, then at that time, it was one of the first books printed. The first edition was printed in 1969. When I joined, we had that book. We didn't have many books. The Bhagavad Gita, we just had the abridged edition. We had the Ishopanishad, the first volume of the Krishna book. The second volume came later. But in 1969, Prabhupada had this Ishopanishad printed. So, the introduction to this book was a lecture which Prabhupada had given. When Prabhupada had come to London, which was also about 1969, Prabhupada first came to London, staying at John Lennon on John estate which John Lennon had acquired. And Prabhupada liked to do programs in different parts of London. This was our program even when in 1971, I remember also Prabhupada coming to England, we would arrange programs, outside programs. We would go to different parts of London and we would rent a big town hall. Town halls are not very expensive. They were not very expensive to rent in those days. I don't know about now, but in those days it didn't cost us a lot of money. But we would rent the town hall, and Prabhupada would come and give a lecture. And, few people would come, not a lot of people, but it depends on the area. In London, sometimes it's more Hindus, so if it's a Hindu area, you maybe get more people. But Prabhupada had asked the devotees to pick some topics they thought would be appropriate for him to speak on. And one of them was this introduction to the Vedas. And so this lecture has always been put as the introduction to the book of the Ishopanishad. Ishopanishad, we're going to be looking this morning. We want to look at the Vedas actually. I think you've all got your student handbook also. Yeah. And in your student handbooks, I think, is there a picture of the Vedas? Do you have that?
Yeah.
Huh? I think it comes right at the end of this PowerPoint. I should have put it further in. Here we are. Vedic knowledge. Okay, you got that in your handbook? Yeah. Okay. So, we want to have a look about, we want to see something about the structure of the Vedas and what it means. I've given you this article written by Satyarat Prabhu. He talks, what exactly is Vedic? He discusses about that. What exactly is Vedic? And he discussed it in the beginning of the article. He talks about the origin of the word Vedic. It comes from Vid. And he talks about different words which are pronounced. What are some of the words he mentions there? Can you find that article? Go through that article. Can you go through me?
The word Veda can be traced to the Sanskrit word Vid, which means to know or knowledge. It is related to the word Vit and wisdom.
Wit and wisdom. Vit meaning to know, and from Vit we have wit and wisdom coming from the same root, wit, meaning to know. Yes, go ahead.
From the German. Idea, originally vidya, Greek, and video, Latin. One who knows, sees the truth, hence video.
Video, okay, so I learned something reading that, We all hear the word video, so he explains here that to know something. So from this word vid, we have this word Veda, the Vedic knowledge. And so Vedic knowledge, Satyaraj Prabhu begins talking about how we use this word quite a lot. We say, oh, it's not Vedic, Prabhu, or their cooking is not Vedic, or the music, the kirtan is very Vedic, or the culture Vedic. We like to use this term Vedic. What exactly does this word Vedic mean? So, like this, he's explaining the origin of the word Vedic, meaning actual knowledge. And then there's a quote also from Beyond Birth and Death. Can you read that quote for me?
The word Veda means book of knowledge. There are many books of knowledge which vary according to the country, population, environment, etc. In India, books of knowledge are referred to as the Vedas. In the West, they are called the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Muslims accept the Quran. What is the purpose for all of these books of knowledge? They are to train us to understand our position as pure souls.
Thank you. Yeah. So this is from Beyond Birth and Death. Srila Prabhupada is explaining we have different books of knowledge, different parts of the world. In India generally, all books of knowledge are called Vedas. And so you can see here also we've put some block diagrammatic representation of the different sections of the Vedas. We have the two different divisions. Generally, when we speak of Vedas, usually it means the original Vedas. Just like, have we got a light thing I can point? Is it this thing? We don't have a pointer, eh? Okay, we don't have a pointer, so I'll just walk here. So here, up here we have Rig, Yajur, Sama Veda and Atharva, the original four Vedas. Right? Generally, when we think of the Vedas, people will think, the four Vedas. Rig, Yajur, Sama and Atharva. And in the article, Satyaraj talks about what these different Vedas mean. How does he describe them? One is incantation, and another is about rituals, ritualistic activities. We have that. Oh, thank you, sorry. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, can you see that part there in the article? Well, how does he describe the four Vedas? The different functions?
The Rig Veda, the Veda of sacred sounds.
Sacred sounds, okay.
Sama Veda, the Veda of melody.
Melodies.
Yajur Veda, the Veda of rituals.
Rituals, okay.
And the Atharva Veda, the Veda of incantation.
Incantation, right. Okay, so then we have the four Vedas, and then we have, in addition to the four Vedas, we have these things, which are corollary of the Vedas. You have, what is this one? Samhitas. You have the Samhitas, you have the Brahmanas, you have the Aranyakas, and you have also the Upanishads. These are all corollaries of the four Vedas. And they're parts of the original Veda, they're Shruti. So these, for example, the Aranyakas, it's about going to the forest, more like related to the Vanaprastha order of life. And then the Brahmanas, that is involving, what does it say? How does he describe the Brahmana section?
In the booklet it says explanation of mantras for rituals for Grihastha.
Okay, explanation of mantras, that's what we would expect from Brahmanas, right? chant a lot of mantras. We go to Bhakti-Vidya Purna Maharaj's Gurukul there. They do a lot of chanting of mantras. And this is generally for Grihastha kind of people. Okay, so like that, these different sections of the 4 Vedas are there. In addition, the Upanishads are also there. The Upanishads, Prabhupada has a list of the Upanishads. If you look in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Adi Lila, chapter 7, actually when Chaitanya Charitamrita came out, the very first part of the Chaitanya Charitamrita which was published was chapter 7 of Adi Lila. Chapter 7 of Adi Lila is all about Lord Chaitanya converting the Mayavadis. Lord Chaitanya in Benares meeting with Prakshananda Saraswati, and there's a lot of discussion about why Lord Chaitanya didn't study Vedanta Sutra, why he just chanted Hare Krishna. This is all very important preaching. So in that chapter 7, in text number 108, Prabhupada has a purport which lists 108 Upanishads. Interesting. You know why it's not clear from reading the purport why Prabhupada mentions the Upanishads, but it's verse number 108, and he mentions 108 names of the Upanishads. So 108 prominent Upanishads are there. And of these 108 prominent Upanishads, 12 Upanishads are very important. And of these 12, the first one is the Ishopanishad. It's the Ishopanishad which is given a lot of importance over all of the other Upanishads. Generally, they don't write commentaries on Vedas. We have commentaries on Srimad Bhagavatam, we have commentaries on Bhagavad Gita, but generally Vedas, you won't see commentaries. But the Ishopanishad, the Acharyas have given us some commentary on the Ishopanishad. It's the most accepted of the Upanishads. And this Ishopanishad, we said, it comes from the Yajurveda. And actually there's 2 parts of the Yajurveda. One is the dark and one is the white. So it's from the Shukla Yajurveda. And it's the last chapter. It's the last chapter of the Yajurveda. That's where Ishopanishad comes from. So then we have all of these other things. These are all parts of the Vedic literature again. Philosophy. We have Shiksha, phonetics, is it? Then Vaikarna, grammar, and then Nirukta, etymology, Chandra. What is Chandra?
Meters.
Meters, all the meters. And then at the bottom we have Jyotish, the astrology, yeah. So astrology is also part of the 4 Vedas. It's part of the Shruti, some connection there to the Shruti. Not directly the 4 Vedas, but Upa-Vedas, some connection. And on the other side, we have the Shruti. So we have the Smriti rather. Shruti is the hearing process, and the Smriti means remembering. So Prabhupada explains that Shruti is like the mother, and Smriti is like sister. You know, if you have a sister, she will always say, Mother says, she'll always tell you what your mother says. You know, she's always wants to tell you, Mother says you shouldn't do that, you know. Your sisters are like that. So Smriti is the sister, the Shruti is the mother, hearing directly. So these 2 divisions of the Vedic literature are there. Prabhupada had a nice discussion. You can see it in the Science of Self-Realization. It began with correspondence with the professor from Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, and professor of Asian Studies. At that time, Krishna consciousness had come to Berkeley, and the devotees wanted to establish a Krishna conscious society within the university. And so the professor had some opposition, and there was some correspondence exchange between Prabhupada and the professor. And the professor, he was a big professor of Asian studies. He was arguing that, Bhagavad Gita, that is not Vedic. He says Bhagavad Gita is only Smriti. He didn't want to accept the Krishna consciousness movement because we were preaching Bhagavad Gita. And this professor was saying, no, Vedic knowledge is Shruti. He wanted the four Vedas. So Prabhupada had some discussion with him. There was exchange of letters there. And Prabhupada was arguing that Vedic knowledge includes also Smriti. But there is a class of people who only accept this Shruti. These philosophers, Vedic philosophers, armchair speculators, they don't much care for the Smriti. They don't like all the stories. They don't like the presentation so much of the Purana. They think it is not so superior. They think that the Shruti is more superior. So this is why I thought these articles are very important for you, because in this first article, what exactly is Vedic, Satyaraj Prabhu gives some references to establish the superiority of the Puranic literatures, and that anything which is actually Vedic knowledge will include not only the Shruti, but also the Smriti, and Smriti means also the Puranas, the Itihasas, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, these things. So you can see over here, we've mentioned what is the different divisions of the Smriti. We have on the bottom here, I think we have the 6 darshans. Is it? The 6 darshans which are up there, which we study in Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada mentioned how actually spiritual master means to be familiar with all of these different philosophical systems. There is the Sankhya philosophy, taught by Bhakti-Shastri. There is the Yoga Sutras from Jaimini. There is the Karma Mimamsa coming from Yoga Sutras from Patanjali, and Karma Mimamsa from Jaimini, and then you have Astavarka, and you have these other different philosophical systems. So they're mentioned there. Nyaya, logic. Logic is coming from Gautama. These are all what is called Sat Darshan, the 6 darshan. Right? And then we have these other different divisions of the scriptures here mentioned. The Pancharatras, the Puranas, Itihasas, ritualistic sutras, showing all of these different things. Where are these sutras? Shrota Sutra, Griha Sutras, Dharma Sutras. Of course, the only sutra most people have heard of is Kama Sutra. Right? So, generally, the limit of their Vedic knowledge. So So the Puranas, of course, they're divided into different sections, 18 major Puranas, 18 minor Puranas. So all of these books, they're all coming from the pen of Srila Vyasadeva. He's presenting to us this Vedic knowledge. We all know that Srila Vyasadeva, after writing all of these different books, he did not feel the satisfaction, the peace of mind which he was expecting to get. When people write, generally they want to feel some satisfaction from the labor, that they feel a sense of achievement. But Srila Vyasadeva, on the contrary, he felt just the opposite. He felt disappointed and depressed with the whole thing. That he had labored so much to present so many different books of knowledge for the benefit of mankind. And it was at that time that Narada Muni came and then instructed him that he should write on the glories of the Supreme Lord. And that was his mature understanding of the Vedic knowledge when he presented the Vedic wisdom. So we want all of you to appreciate how big the Vedic knowledge is, how much is involved there. So many different philosophical systems, different mantras, different sciences, different arts, how to play the music, and then how to fight a war, how to maintain a family, how to farm, education, all different aspects of life is included within the Vedic knowledge. So, Srila Vyasadeva, in addition, of course, writing all these books, he compiled the Vedanta Sutra, which was like the essence of all of this knowledge. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is what we call Vyasadeva's own commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. So it's important for us to understand that why Srila Prabhupada wrote his commentary on Ishopanishad. Why would he select, of all these Vedic literatures, why he picked the Ishopanishad? There were so many other books he could have translated, but he considered the Ishopanishad to be the most suitable, the most convenient one for presenting Vedic literature. There is a class of people, as we said, there's a class of people who will only they only want Shruti. So when you meet that class of people, you know that you can't sell them a Bhagavad Gita. You're not going to get them to take a Bhagavad Gita because they look down on the Bhagavad Gita. They say this is only Smriti. This is not the real Vedas. So therefore Srila Prabhupada wanted to give us also Vedic literature. Just like when we go for preaching, sometimes you have to preach to people who only accept Vedas. There was an instance, Hridayananda Maharaj, when he was still a brahmachari, he had to go to some prestigious college in USA and give a talk. And attending that talk was a Sanskrit professor. His name was Professor Bharati. He was quite a prominent Sanskrit scholar in his time. So Hridayananda Prabhu at that time, he was giving the talk. And he quoted, some verses from Bhagavad Gita. But Bhagavad Gita, this Professor Bharti, hearing Bhagavad Gita, just scoffed at it, I said, just listen, this foolish young man, he wants to prove his erudition, he's speaking only Bhagavad Gita. This is not real Vedic knowledge. So, what are some good quotes which come from the Vedas? If you have to speak and somebody only wants to hear from the Vedas, what are some important, there's one verse in particular which is very prominent, and sometimes you will see Prabhupada does this also in the purports. He will make use of Vedic quotations, not just Bhagavad Gita, not just Bhagavatam, but he will speak from the Vedas. So we should be familiar about these things, that there are such verses in the scriptures which are very suitable and which help to support our preaching. In particular circumstances we may have to make use of such references. Hridayananda Maharaj, or who was speaking, he quoted one verse from the Vedas. He quoted the verse, Nityo Nityanam Chetanana Chetanana Eko Bhavana Yogadasita. And it is said that when Professor Bharati heard this verse, he nearly had a heart attack. Because this verse is so clear and so obvious in its meaning that there's no way one can interpret it any other way than to understand the meaning of a personality behind the creation. The meaning itself is so direct and obvious that no amount of mental speculation can give it any other meaning. And when he heard that verse, Professor Bharati was, why do you have to say that verse? Wow, why do you use that verse? Why that verse? He just couldn't, he couldn't think how to defeat it, how to overcome it. So this was appreciated later on by Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada recognized Hridayananda Maharaj for his preaching. And very early in his Krishna consciousness, he awarded him the renounced order of life. So this is a good example of how to make use of Vedic references in our preaching. We should be familiar with that there are such verses generally from the Upanishad, which are very good, very powerful, and which we can use them to present the personal philosophy of Krishna consciousness. There were many Upanishads, but Srila Prabhupada commented, he translated and commented on the Ishopanishad. It has already been commented on. There's a commentary by Bhakti-Vinod Thakur. There's also a commentary by some acharyas in the line of Madhva. So the Vaishnava acharyas do recognize the Ishopanishad. The word Isha itself implies some kind of principle there, that there's some controller, some personality, just like Ishwara. So Isha indicates the idea of personality, some person behind the creation. And often we don't find that so obvious from the Vedas. You've been studying Bhagavad Gita, so you will remember in the first few chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, there's some talk about Varnashram Dharma and how Varnashram Dharma can help us to... How does Prabhupada compare the Varnashram system, which is actually what the Vedas is all about? He compares the Varnashram system to stepping stone. That they can bring one to something higher. The Varnashram in itself is not the goal, but they're like stepping stones on the path to transcend. So the Upanishads are useful for a particular kind of people. And we hope you will be able to appreciate more how to use this Ishopanishad and what class of people this book will be particularly appropriate for. It's not for everyone. We will see how the Upanishad is for those who have actually finished with the material life. Then they're ready for the Vedic knowledge. Then they're ready. The Upanishad can bring one. How does Prabhupada translate Ishopanishad? Ishopanishad's meaning means the knowledge which brings one closer. The knowledge which brings one closer to transcendence. So this is like a subtitle for the Ishopanishad. Any questions so far?
Maharaj, you mentioned that Saddarshana goes to sit in the Vyasasana and gives class, and must be familiar with these. It's given in one of the purports in Bhagavatam. And in the booklet, it's mentioned that our acharyas don't recognize the 5 darshanas as properly Vedic because of an absence of bhakti. So, how do we overcome this contradiction? Do we read them or not read them?
You don't need to read them, you just need to read Prabhupada's book. Because Srila Prabhupada, in his purports, he gives us everything we need to know about their philosophy in order to present Krishna consciousness. We don't need to study their books, we just need to read Prabhupada's book, and you get everything you need to know. Just like within Prabhupada's books, Prabhupada explains about the atheist Kapila philosophy. You can read about that in the Bhagavatam. You can read about Karma Mamamsa, you can read how Lord Krishna was preaching Karma Mamamsa philosophy. And Prabhupada talks about it there, he explains what we need to know. No, it's not that we need to go and separately study each of these different philosophies. But Prabhupada wrote his book in such a way to include these different philosophical systems and to point out the defects within these different systems so that we know how to present Krishna consciousness when we do confront people who are presenting these philosophies.
Who defines Ishopanishad as the most important one?
I said Srila Prabhupada said that. Srila Prabhupada himself said that to Rameshwari. This is the most important book. Maybe because he's thinking about preaching in the Western world to people who have no knowledge of Vedas, who have no knowledge of Scripture, that it might be a good book for them to enter into an understanding, a beginning in their spiritual practice, a beginning in spiritual knowledge, preliminary knowledge.
Now, when we say there are 12 Upanishads which are important, and there is
well, when it's listed, when the 12 names are listed, the very first one is Isha. It's the first one. It comes at the head of the list. The 12 names of the Ishopanishad are listed, and the first name is Isha. Well, I don't know if Prabhupada can look it from another scripture or what, but it's certainly there in Prabhupada's book, like that. You can see the quote there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He mentions that of the 108 Upanishads, 12 are prominent, 12 are important. And the first one that he mentioned is Isha.
Another question: how does Riti become a Riti?
Huh?
How does Riti become a Riti? Who writes them, and how do they become approved? get into the region of Smriti.
How does it become Smriti?
Yeah.
It comes from the self-realized staging. What is actually Smriti and what is actually Vedic? We can also talk about the writings of the Goswamis, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Jiva Goswami, books like that. They are also considered Vedic, although they're written in the modern time, but we can also consider them to be Vedic knowledge, because they're based on the original Vedic teaching, and they're presenting the conclusions of the Vedic knowledge. So, because they are self-realized sages, that's why their books are accepted as a part. On the basis that they present what is the conclusions of the scriptures. They do not write anything which goes against the conclusions of the Vedic knowledge. It has to be supported.
Some people who accept, Vedic knowledge, they don't know who Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, and they don't accept him, and therefore they won't accept him.
Yeah, of course, there are people like that. The other sampradayas, they will say, well, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not a person, they don't accept him as the personality of Godhead. They give more importance to, like in other Vaishnava sampradayas, they give more importance to maybe other Puranas rather than Srimad Bhagavatam. They will give more importance on other Upanishads. Yeah, they have different interpretations of the Vedic knowledge. But there's no contradiction about the conclusion that we're all servants of the Supreme Lord. So there's no contradiction in that respect. There's an eternal distinction between the Lord and the living entity. So generally, among the Vaishnava Sampradayas, we don't have a great conflict. Rather, we're able to work with them. When they installed the deities at Bangalore, in Tirupati, when they brought the Ansasakis there, in Tirupati, that time they had the Ramanuja Sampradaya Vaishnavas come and do the yagya for the installation of the deities. And you can read also when Prabhupada came to Hyderabad in 1977. At that time, the devotees had brought some of the pandits from Tirupati, and they welcomed Prabhupada. And they were reciting Sanskrit mantras and everything, all glorifying Prabhupada and glorifying the pure devotees. They were happy to glorify Prabhupada. They appreciated Prabhupada so much. And they came they did the deity installation in our Hyderabad temple in August of 1977. So we have a working relationship with the other Vaishnava Sampradaya. We don't have any contradiction with it. Rather, they appreciate our movement with other Sampradayas. And even you'll find sometimes that people who are born in families which come from Madhvacharya Sampradaya or Ramanuja Sampradaya, they become initiated within ISKCON. It's not uncommon. There's a number of people born in Vaishnava families, South Indian Vaishnava families, they become initiated. One way in which we can explain this is because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu his mission was to synthesize the four sampradayas together. He took the different elements from each of the sampradayas and brought them together within Gaudiya Vaishnava. So the main principle, like Madhvacharya's complete defeat of Mayavadi philosophy. And Ramanuja's Acharya gave great importance to serving the Vaishnava. So these kind of elements there brought their Chaitanya Mahaprabhu brought these main elements, 2 elements from each of the 4 Sampradayas. He brought them and made them the basis of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. So although they may not accept the position of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we still have a good working relationship with them. And they generally appreciate the Krishna consciousness.
Which category have you Old Testament and Quran? Have you seen or Old Testament and Quran?
All the Old Testament and the Quran, are we going to put them in Shruti or Smriti? Well, we said we put them in the category of Vedic knowledge. We said they could also be considered Vedic knowledge, but we're not going to classify it as either Shruti or Smriti. But we could say it is also Vedic knowledge. Knowledge from the past, presenting good culture. But it wouldn't be correct really to make it either Shruti or Smriti. Prabhupada was just saying it's Vedic knowledge. Yeah?
We know that today the Vedas represent 8% of the original Vedas. It represents 8% of the original Vedas. Do we know what we have lost in the 92% remaining?
I didn't hear the whole thing clearly. Can you say it again?
No, I said that in fact today the Vedas represent 8% of the original Vedas.
8%.
8%.
Yeah, we've lost a lot.
Yeah. But do we know what we had in the 92% remaining? What we had?
Do we know where the 92% is?
Yeah. What we have lost? What was the knowledge in this one?
Well, that's true not only for the Vedas, that's true also for the Mahabharata. That Madhvacharya, even in the time of Madhvacharya, he points out that the Mahabharata is corrupting. That most of the original Mahabharata is not there. But generally, the Bhagavad Gita is consistent. Although many parts of the Mahabharata are corrupted, and of course Vedas are corrupted, but Bhagavad Gita is quite consistent. You find very little deviations or corruptions within Bhagavad Gita. That's pretty well accepted, whether you go to the Mayapur or whatever group, generally you'll find it's the same Bhagavad Gita. Of course, can be translated, can be interpreted in different ways, but the original text is there. So Bhagavad Gita is good. Ishopanishad, generally, that's pretty consistent. I think the Ishopanishad is generally okay. How many mantras in Ishopanishad? 18, right? Yeah. How many Puranas? 18 Puranas, right? Okay, so 18 mantras are there, and it's generally quite consistent. I don't think it's been corrupted. But the Vedas, you can say only 8% is there. How much is there, But we're not so much interested in just what is the Vedas. We want to know what is the goal of the Vedas. Right? Vedanta is there. The Vedanta Sutra, that's there. I think that, I don't know how consistent that is. Shouldn't be too bad, generally. But what's important for us also is commentary on the Vedanta, Bhagavata. So we try to see that, how it's more important. It's not just all of these things, all these rituals, all of these mantras, incantations and hymns of the Vedas. We can get lost in the flowery language of the Vedas, right? Krishna was saying, you have to beware not to get too drawn into the flowery words of the Vedas, rise above the Vedas. So this is the idea, go above the Vedas. And what is the fruit of all the Vedas? The desired tree. The Vedic knowledge is like the tree, And then the fruit of the tree is Bhagavatam. Yeah, the Srimad Bhagavatam is actually the fruit of all the Vedas. So we have the fruit. We have the fruit of all the Vedas. It's the fruit which is important. When the mangoes come in, if the mangoes on the tree, then people take care of the tree. They'll be watching who is stealing my mangoes, We go to Amgat on Parikrama, and you go to Amgat and all the mangoes. When we go on Parikrama, there's nobody there because there's no mangoes on the tree. So nobody cares, You go there to care. But as soon as the mangoes are there, they've got the dogs there, you've got choki guards, you've got guards everywhere. Because the fruit is what's valuable. So Bhagavatam is the fruit. That is what's really valuable. The Vedas itself, we've lost a lot of that. But we've got the Bhagavatam. Yeah?
What I just wonder what the argument between when somebody is saying, there is to give up the truth, and some argument also reveal up the truth, why should we reveal up the truth, why should I reveal it? So I guess this is a question of who is going to do for them. Why should we reveal what there is very good up to the truth? This is a good argument.
So you're saying
that somebody says that to reveal absolute truth, but the Muslims say the Quran is to reveal absolute truth.
How do you deal with this kind of thing? Somebody is presenting, Quran, okay, we accept. Quran, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a book of truth. One man who lives in Calcutta, I met one gentleman, very nice gentleman, a professor of English in a Christian school in Calcutta. He's a Muslim, and he wrote a book, the Bhagavad Gita and the Quran. And he says the message of the Quran is just the same as Bhagavad Gita. And he wrote a book all about the similarities between the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita. But generally, how do we understand the position of the different scriptures? We give an example. It's just like currency in different parts of the world. You have Indian rupees, you have dollars, you have euros, you have rupees. What is the strength of these different currencies? It is all based on the gold. How much gold have they got in the country? The gold reserve will determine the strength of the currency. In the same way, there are different faiths or religious traditions, and the strength of these is understood on the basis of the gold reserve. And the gold is like the Gyan and the Vairagya. How much knowledge and how much detachment from material world have we come to? How much knowledge have we got of the Lord and His energies, and how much have we actually detached ourselves from material sense enjoyment? You can understand the merit of the different traditions on this basis.
Patanjali, the Yoga Sutras, they're actually relatively recent in history, maybe 2,000 years. In other words, in the time of Yapadeva, Yoga Sutras, Patanjali didn't exist.
Yeah, but even before Patanjali there was yoga. It's not that yoga began with Patanjali. In Patanjali he may have written Yoga Sutras, but before that, you see the Vedic knowledge, it was all taught, it was all passed on, told. It was just only some time back maybe it came to be written down. But it was still there. The system of yoga didn't originate with Patanjali. Yoga was there long ago. These different impersonal practices, meditation, pranayama. The Satya Yoga people were doing meditation. They knew how to do all of those things. You have Sabari Muni going into the bottom of the Yamuna. How do they do all of these things? They know the art. They studied yoga. The nose pressing yoga. So it was there. We give the credit, potentially somebody writes it down, but the system was already there. Any other?
Is the Chanakya Sutras part of Dharma-shastra or is that? The Chanakya Sutras.
Chanakya Pandit, Arthashastra. What about it?
Yeah, I was just wondering where the
Arthashastra.
in this tree.
Yeah, where would you go? Somewhere in there. Not one of these scriptures. Prabhupada said Chanakya is not really devotee, but he's giving moral codes. Morality, how to live in this world, civilized, cultured way, like that. So, everything, we could say we can describe it as being Vedic. It has some origin somewhere to these different philosophical systems. Prabhupada wrote Ishopanishad. He wanted us to have something which we could preach to the Vedic scholars, to the class of people who are only interested in Shruti, who only want to accept one aspect of the Vedic culture. But you will see in the articles, you read through this article, the one on what exactly is Vedic. He gives some different references from Jiva Goswami and other persons who explain that you must also know the Purana. It's not enough to simply know the Shruti. That we must also be familiar with the Smriti. The other day I met someone, he was arguing to me, he said, only Bhagavad Gita. And I said, well, what about Puranas? What about Srimad Bhagavatam? No, only Bhagavad Gita. And then when it came to Bhagavad Gita, only the Triploki Gita. Very limited. But devotional service, we know from the Nectar of Devotion class, it is stated that devotional service which is not in accordance to the Shruti, the Smriti, the Puranas, the Itihasas, then it is simply a disturbance to society. So we accept all the different branches of the Vedic knowledge. Mahabharata, Ramayana, the original Ramayana, they're all parts of the Vedic knowledge. Any other point? Yeah?
How do Sufi come into print? Like if you read to someone and then someone writes it down, that's like that's not.
How does it come into being? The Shruti. Shruti.
Yes. Because I see that Smriti, we find Bhagavad Gita, so we have to put it down, and Sanjay spoke, and the Lord speaks, it's all there. And we hear the past time where Vyasdev dictates and Lord Ganesh writes down.
Well, traditionally the Shruti is heard. Shruti. Sateni Brahma Hridayadi Kapaye. The Vedic knowledge is imparted into the heart of Brahma. So then it's passed on by word of mouth. The Brahmanas will speak and people will hear. So by hearing, but with the beginning of Kali Yuga, because Vyasadeva understood that Kali Yuga is coming and people will have short memory, so there was a need to have everything written down. So it's described how Srila Vyasadeva took the one Veda and he divided it into 4 and he gave each section to different disciples. So like this, for the beginning of Kali Yuga it was written down. But usually will be heard. You want to hear the way, you go to the ashram or the brahmana, you go to the temple, the brahmana will be there, you will recite the Vedas. So everything was by hearing. Because of the picture.
You went all our countries
They don't like the snakes.
So, well, I used to tell them that the prayer, that the prayer is not for 18. And I might like to recite a prayer for them.
Well, Prabhupada was liberal. He understood it's not the same in different parts of the world. But at least in the Western countries, Prabhupada wanted that picture because that picture is attractive to a particular class of people, isn't it? There are a class of people that think, wow, that's far out, this is very mystical, looks very spiritual. In Asia also, you know, I mean, it's a very Vedic kind of picture. The Buddhists also, they have this kind of stuff. If you're in a Buddhist country, they like this kind of stuff. Africa, they've got superstition, they've got some feelings about these things. So I would agree that it's maybe not the right picture for Africa. But some parts of the world, and Prabhupada definitely said he wanted that picture in the Western countries because Prabhupada understood that many young people, Western people, they were attracted to that kind of thing. They liked that. The picture, the cover picture is important in distributing the book. And people like the picture, they'll buy the book. Isn't it? Yeah? First book. First book? Yeah. Yeah, okay, so this is, the class, we'll see. It may take us longer than 5 lessons, may not. We may finish this week, we'll see how it goes. But that's the general plan of the course, we'll see. Okay, so we're talking about the introduction. Prabhupada was lecturing on the topic, Introduction to the Vedas. Now Prabhupada doesn't get into a big thing talking about the different Vedas, but he starts in a very clear, very practical manner. He talks about pramana, proof. We want to get, if we accept knowledge, what kind of proof? Where should we look to get proof? What kind of sources of evidence do we have? So Prabhupada, his lecture is very suitable for an audience with no background. They don't know anything. So beginning right from scratch, he's talking about knowledge. How do you get knowledge? Where do you get your knowledge from? What are you going to do to prove something? And so he mentions the different kinds of evidences, different pramanas. And first of all, of course, we have senses. Generally, people will say, seeing is believing. The scientists, they put a lot of importance on seeing. They think everything has, if you can see it, then it's real. And we have a problem when we start talking about soul, right? Because people say, have you ever seen the soul? Have you ever seen God? You say there's a God. Have you ever seen God? People talk like that. Have you ever seen? So we have to be able to deal with this kind of thing. Pratyaksha, direct sense perception. We can get knowledge from the senses. We can get knowledge also from hypothesis, using the mind. How does Prabhupada say hypothesis? He says, in my opinion, or I think. So this is hypothesis. This is what is called in Sanskrit as anumana. And then shakta, or the best source of knowledge is simply by hearing from the authority. Right? We give the example. The young child wants to know, who is my father? So, we can go to all the men in the room. The father may not be truthful. Father may hide and may say, no, I'm not your father. No. But the mother knows. If you go to the mother, then she knows who is the father. So in the same way, hearing, when we hear from the authority, then we can get proper evidence. So these three different sources of knowledge are there. And this is a nice illustration showing this common saying. I think in India this is common. We have the same saying in China. The blind man massaged the elephant. You can see that the different men, they're all blind, and the one man has got the trunk of the elephant, saying, what is it like? And what does he say it's like? It's like a snake, right? And the other one has got the tusk, and he's saying like an arrow. Someone else is up there on the ear, and he's saying, no, it's like this, it's like this hatchet, this axe thing. The other man's at the side, he said, no, it's like a brick wall. The other one's got the legs, it's like a tree. Someone else has got the tail, it's like a rope. Are they wrong?
No.
They're not wrong, but they're only giving a partial picture. They're only describing one part of the picture. They're not describing the complete thing. So this is often the problem in spiritual realization also. That in describing the absolute truth, that people often only describe a part of the absolute truth, rather than describe the complete whole. So, we want people to understand that. It's not that they're wrong when people say the Lord is impersonal and He has no form. That's not wrong, but that's only a partial explanation of the truth. There's more to be understood. Prabhupada writes in the Ishopanishad that the absolute truth is everything, both within our experience and beyond it also. So we want people to understand like that there's more than just what we can perceive with our senses. So we have to hear. We get actual knowledge by hearing from the absolute, from the actual source. And we show here the disciplic succession. Knowledge comes down through the disciplic succession. We have to hear from the spiritual teachers. This is important. By the way, how many of you have done the disciple course? Have you all attended that? You took the disciple course? There's a one. You've taken it?
I went down to the office and asked about the disciple course, and they said it was for women only.
Anyway, we'll be looking at, I wanted to show one part. It's an important point, some important points in the disciple course which are useful. And maybe we can present it also in the course of the Ishopanishad. But hearing from the spiritual master is very important for us. It's a way generally how we get proper knowledge. Okay, so the problem is, of course, that we are conditioned souls. That we ourselves are not perfect. People may argue why I have to hear from another person, why I can't understand everything myself. What is wrong with my own judgment? So we bring to the attention of people that we do have defects. We have these 4 different defects. We commit mistakes subject to illusion, cheating, and imperfect senses. Actually, how does Prabhupada explain making mistakes? Who are some great men who made mistakes? What did he do? What happened? Tell me.
He didn't listen didn't support and he didn't at the moment that he will be shot.
Yeah. He went anyway. And who else? Another example? Prabhupada didn't give that. Kennedy. Yeah, Kennedy also. That he was shot also. A similar thing that he was told, it's very dangerous, Dallas. There's a lot of nasty people in that city, and you go in an open car. He could have went in the bulletproof car, but he chose to drive in the open car, standing there up there waving to people, and he got shot. That was the end of his story. So mistakes. Even great men make mistakes. And what does Prabhupada say? What's the common saying? To err is human. Yeah. We think, everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. We often say it like this. So the first defect of conditioned soul, making mistakes. And then illusion. What's the illusion? Which illusion does Prabhupada speak about? Most common illusion?
We identify with the body.
Yeah, we're thinking we're the body. That's a big illusion. Imperfect senses. An example Prabhupada gives? The sun, right? We look up at the sun and we see it's only the size of a button or a coin, but the sun is much bigger. This is our imperfect senses. And cheating propensity, that is also very common, particularly common in the Kali Yuga. That we will cheat. We will say, are you chanting 16 rounds? Yes. Are you paying attention? Are you avoiding offenses when like this, sometimes cheating tendency is very strong. So the Sanskrit words are there. Again, this is taken from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Oh, here we see some examples. You may have seen these before. This is a common one. This lady can be seen either as an old lady or as a young lady, according to how we view the picture. You look at the picture one way, and it's an old lady. Right? You look at the picture another way, and you can see here, if this is her chin and her mouth and her nose, it's an old lady. But then if you look at this is the chin, and then it becomes a young lady. So how you look at the picture? You see that?
I can see only the old lady.
Well, the young lady, this is her eye. And this is her chin. Like, so, different, the eyes have these defects that we can see things in different ways. Again, you can see here, the lines look like they're not straight, but actually they're straight, but they appear to be bent, but they're not bent. They're an illusion. And similarly also these lines again, they look like they're crooked, but actually they're straight. This is the illusion. This appears to be motion. The whole thing appears to be moving. You can almost visualize it all rotating, but it's just a picture. And here's a nice mistake to make. See the man? Where is he going to go? Yeah. He won't have a very good flight. Okay, so we were speaking about the importance of hearing from the spiritual master. So we're going to talk next about how should we express our feelings, because of our conditioned nature, sometimes it becomes a problem how to express Guru Bhakti in a public assembly, how to speak about it. the spiritual teacher. I think what we'll do now, we'll have a break for Gayatri, and then after the break we'll go on to the Guru Bhakti. Okay, so we'll take a break now.